Today on Independent Wrestling Profiles, we're talking with the Windsor Spitfire, Mikey Jenkins. Who is Mikey Jenkins, the wrestler?
Oh, that's a loaded question.
Yeah.
As a wrestler, I would say Mikey Jenkins is a very fire, energetic, wants to be the life of the party, essentially. Always wants to be the loudest guy in the room while always being the sweetest guy in the room at the same time.
That's awesome. And when did Mikey Jenkins, or yourself, I'll stop doing that, I promise. When did you first discover professional wrestling, even just from like a fan level?
So it was, I remember exactly, 2011 Over the Limit. I was at my cousin's birthday party, and I never seen wrestling in my life. So he had a bunch of his buddies around, and they ordered the Over the Limit pay-per-view. And I'm like, what is this? And it wasn't until the main event where it was John Cena versus The Miz and Alex Riley in the I Quit match. John Cena was the I quit, the resiliency, the entertainment of all of it was just what grabbed me instantly. And weird way of saying that, but I remember it was that. From that moment on, I loved what pro wrestling was. I wanted to know everything about it. I wanted to know. I wanted to see every week. Really, it grabbed onto me.
Is it safe to say that John Cena was one of your favorites at that point then?
Yes, he was the first person I ever really liked in pro wrestling.
And do you remember kind of any of the other guys that started to grip you, or any storylines or feuds that as you were progressing really kind of helped snowball that love of wrestling for you?
So second would be Randy Orton, of course. I mean, just everything about him. Even at the start, I could just really understand and really love his fluent from one section to the next to each spot he did. It was always so purposeful, and it made me really love it even more and appreciate the art that went into pro wrestling. Now, it wasn't until NXT TakeOver Toronto, the first one, that I really wanted to start doing pro wrestling. It was my first ever pro wrestling event in person. So whether it was indie or WWE, it was my first event overall. And actually, it was the first match of the night that made me instantly need to do pro wrestling, which was Ty Dillinger, and Bobby Roode. And it was the energy in the arena that just drew me into it. It captivated me and made me want to do that for other people.
That's amazing. So you were watching it, you were loving it, but then when you actually got to feel it is when you were like, no, I need to do this.
Yes.
So what was the next step? You instantly felt it at that point. You're like, I need to do this. So what did you do next?
So the next step for me was to look for something that was around me. Wrestling school wise. So the biggest one that popped up around here, this was 2017. And the first one that I looked into was Battle Arts in Mississauga. And so I messaged, who was it? It was Santino at the time.
Okay.
And I messaged him saying, hey, I want to do this. How do I get into it? So he had me come down, and I loved everything about it, but the problem is at the time I couldn't drive myself. I didn't have my license, so I needed someone to drive me. But the problem is the only person that could, my mom, worked with midnight. So driving to Mississauga every night would just, while working midnights, it was impossible. Yeah. So after doing some more digging, I don't even remember how, I just stumbled upon Crossbody. And I went to a show, and instantly I knew this is the place for me, that this is the place I need to train at. My first indie show it was it was special, man. It was really special. You can have fun at the bigger WWE shows, but something about indie wrestling, it's the heart, it's the drive of everybody that's there because they all have to prove something. So each person adds their own little flair in a way to an indie event because they need to succeed at it, and that's what made me need to do this.
The way I like to put it is that with the indie events, you get that intimacy.
Yes.
Going to NXT TakeOver, a lot of fun, absolutely great energy, but you are a face in the crowd. When you're at an indie show, you are like the wrestlers can see individual features. You're getting high fives as you go in, like you're a part of the show. You're not just attending the show.
Mm-hmm.
So at that point, you decided that crossbody was where you were going to be going.
Yep. Yeah, hands down, that was the place I needed to be. And it was only in Kitchener at the time, so it was only like a 15-20 minute drive from me. So I was like, this is it. This is where I need to train. So I got into contact with Ben, and I went talked to him. We had a good chat on the Monday, and just to go over everything. And ever since the first moment I talked to Ben, I knew I was going to love this guy. He's just such a nice guy, and you could tell he cares about this. So it was an easy choice. And so he sent me to the practice on the Tuesday, and my first practice ever was with Notorious TID, someone I highly looked up to and still do. He's someone that's, I don't know, ever since I went to my first indie event, he was someone that captivated me as an indie wrestler. Something about him is his presence. He's a 6'5", 280-pound dude. He's just a dominating figure. And being able to learn from that guy as well as Ben, it was something special.
So take me through some of these feelings and emotions when you first started training, or even maybe just some of your reactions to the physicality of it. Like, obviously you knew you wanted to do it, but how did it feel to actually start doing it and maybe get hit with the realization of it's not easy work, right? Like it takes a lot,
No,
right?
it takes a lot. It takes a lot of your body. But ever since I was 11, I was doing like from 11 to 17, 16, I was doing martial arts. So I had some experience like judo. I had some experience with some physicality sports wise. But when it came to, so some of the stuff came to me, but when it came to actually bumping in the ring and taking those bumps, it was a whole different story. Getting used to those demanding aspects of the ring was a challenge. It took me a while, and even then, like for a couple of years, I was on and off just because between school and wrestling and just my body just killing it took a while for me to actually stick to it and be able to get some like a foundation.
So you were training while you were in school?
Yes.
Did you find it difficult to balance all of that at the same time?
It was difficult. It was difficult because I was also somebody that needed to play football.
Okay.
So so I wanted to do school, but at the same time I wanted to do football, and I also wanted to do wrestling. So all three of those things they didn't always mix very well together. It was a very demanding schedule, very hectic a lot of the time.
Okay, so can you take me through the journey to getting to your first match and starting to actually compete regularly, where maybe it became a bit more of a primary focus for you in your life?
It was right before the pandemic. I was starting to take it more because I was out of high school right before the pandemic.
Okay.
And so I was actually taking it a lot more seriously, and a lot more commitment went into going into every single class I could. I found that drive in myself that I needed to finally make this a thing, because for years it was just something I was doing, but now it was something I needed because all the distractions, they were out of the way. They were gone. I had my time in high school. I've come to terms with all that. Now it's time to focus on this. So I was making every practice. I was so close to getting my green light, and then the world shut down. So that took a lot out of me. It was like I had so much confidence in myself finally as a wrestler and as a person. And then when everything we went into the shutdown, it's just back to square one. And after we came out of the pandemic, I was ready to go. I was ready to go. I was there every practice, giving 2,000%. I needed to make this finally happen after years and years of just on and off. I needed to give this the commitment that it deserves. And it was June or July of 2021. And we were doing a showcase for crossbody, and I remember Ben did it in such a awesome way. He had me come up and do the 50-50 draw, and he given me the mic. He's like, "Why don't you announce the winner?" Okay, cool. So I announced the winner, whatever. And you know what? Jamie was even like, "You know what? You're doing such a fantastic job. Here's the cue cards. Why don't you read what's up next?" So I start reading the cue cards, and then I see next week you will see the debut of pause Mikey Jenkins, and I just remember bawling my eyes out, man. It was an unreal moment to finally know all that hard work I put into it. In the end, I got there. I got there finally, and it was to have that moment with everybody that I trained with over the years come into the ring and just share with me. It was one of my favorite moments of my life, hands down.
I love how Ben does those. I've seen some, like the Jalen Hill one was on YouTube, but he really wants to make it special for you guys, and
Yeah.
that is so commendable. Can you take me through that following show where you actually had that match? Who was it against? How did it go? What sort of feedback did you get?
So my first ever match was against Pretty Ricky. It was a, oh, I didn't know until I got there, and he's like, "Yes, your first ever match is going to be with Ricky," and he wanted it, and I'm like, I was ecstatic. I was so giddy because Ricky's someone that's just throughout the years has just caught my attention, and I couldn't look away because he's just such a character, yet being so good at wrestling. He balances both like no other. So when I finally got told that I'm having this match with him, I was so excited, but yet so nervous. I'm like, I got to live up to this now. He's giving me the ball. Now I got to run with it. So that night, I knew a bunch of my family and my friends were coming to the show. And by the time everybody came in the door, I remember Ricky coming downstairs. He's like, "Well, you can everybody thank Mikey Jenkins for the house." And he looks at me, he's like, "You know now that we don't have a time limit, right? We can go whenever we want. We could do whatever we want to do because you brought the house." And that's when I'm like, "Oh, we're in here for a good time here tonight." So, and when we went out there, I've never felt I felt nervous, but I felt like I knew what I was doing. I felt in safe hands. And Ricky guided me through that match like such a professional. He's just one of the best. I can never say enough good things about him. And I'm fully grateful for everything he's done for me.
See, I didn't get to see that first match against Pretty Ricky, but I did get to see your most recent one against Pretty Ricky in crossbody before the shutdown. I think that that's actually fascinating to have a match with somebody so early and then again later, and you can almost even
Yeah.
kind of use it as a bit of a measure to how you've improved and how you've carried yourself. And it's just nice to have that. But at that show, one thing that was very apparent is, and it's also very apparent right now talking to you, is the energy you bring. And the character comes out, and you can tell this is, almost like a frat boy kind of thing, or a jock, or a football player. Like it has that kind of allure to it, but it really sucks you in because he's putting out so much energy that you got to put out that energy. Was that kind of always who you wanted to be in the ring? Like, did you know when you kind of started out, hey, this is like I want to be this kind of like super, hyped up jock kind of guy, or did that happen gradually, or did somebody like take me through the creation of that persona of Mikey Jenkins?
Well, thank you for the kind words. But I always knew I wanted to come out with the Letterman jacket, the backwards baseball cap, the sunglasses, the whole get up. I always knew I wanted to come out with that, but at first I didn't know that's how I was going to come out and act. Because at first, I mean, my first ever match, I mean, like anybody else, I was too scared to show any type of energy. I was just trying to be like, okay, I can't screw anything up. I got to make sure people know that I got my green light for a reason. That I can't go out there and look like an unfinished product. But as I started getting more matches under my belt, it was the people I was working with that really brought that energy out and got me comfortable in the ring. As soon as I started, honestly, I would say, as soon as I started working with a company called Rock Solid
Okay.
that goes out and does these bigger shows elsewhere in front of 200, 300 people, that's when I found my character. That's when I found the energy, the ball of fire that I would love to give every single time I go out there, because that's where I found the confidence in myself to trust what I can do in the ring. If I can do all of that in front of 200, 300, no problem, then what's 60 people, what's 50 people, it doesn't matter. That's when I found out it doesn't matter how many people are in that audience. I know what I'm doing, and it doesn't deter me. So with that knowledge, I started coming out more and more fired up. And that's when I'm starting to see, as I'm doing that, the more people are getting behind me instead of just coming out just all, trying to mean mug everything, trying to look focused. Everybody loves that fire, because as soon as you come out with that fire, it's hard not to get into it. It's hard not to yourself want to get fired up as well. My strategy from when I started doing that was always, I want to be the guy that makes people go from looking at their phone and scrolling to putting it down and being like, wait a minute, I have to look at this guy. He's making so much noise and he's showing so much energy and making so much noise that I got to actually stop and ask myself, whoa, 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 who's this guy and how can I see more of him?
Yeah, and then you pick your phone back up like I did when I first saw you, and you tweet about how you see great things for this guy because he absolutely just gripped you right away. Young career so far. I know it's a little bit difficult and it's not to, keep anybody excluded, but can you point out any highlight moments that you've had in your career so far? Maybe it was even starstruck moments, or you met somebody that you didn't expect, a match that just went beautifully, or even a fan interaction that was a compliment that like you carried with you. Like, what are some of the key highlight moments that you've experienced so far?
Wow. I gotta say, one of them for sure was the night when I fought. This was right after I won the crossbody heavyweight championship, and I had to fight in a tournament to keep my championship. So I fought in a singles, and then later on the night, a couple matches later, I fought in a triple threat. And then to finish the night off in the main event, I fought Speedball Mike Bailey
Wow.
in one of the toughest matches I've ever had in my life. Someone that's so good, so unbelievably great at what he does. And he just has a great way to push you and go outside of your comfort zone. And to be able to go the distance with him after 2 matches previously in the night, and to go a 20-minute, 30-minute match with Speedball Mike Maley, that was one of my highlight career. I mean, it just to know I could do it was huge to me.
Tells you the energy is genuine and not just a gimmick.
No, all genuine. It's just turned up like to 20 when I'm in the ring. So it's another one. Highlight would be being able to tag with one of my best friends, one of my mentors, Marcus Custom Ryan. He's someone that ever since the start, when I talked about my coach Tid, he was his tag team partner. They created the Dirty Vets, one of Ontario's legendary teams. They're absolute legends in Ontario. And when Tid called it quits because his body was giving out on him, I remember Cuss telling me the story, and he's like, he looked at Tid and was like, hey, I know you may be done and you have to, put up the boots, but do you mind if I can take your student and run with it for another year, 2 years? And Tid said yes. And we are having such an amazing time right now, such a successful time. Right now, we're tag team champions for Rock Solid and Northland. And, this is 2 years later. So what's in store, another 2 years from now? He thought he would have been done, but we are going strong. And it's honestly learning from him. He's shown me so much. He's shown me how to work a crowd like no other. And honestly, he's one of the guys I have to benefit everything to. I mean, if it wasn't for him, I don't think I would know how to work a crowd at all, honestly. Best way of putting it. He's shown me how to get better in the ring with every single match. And I'm so grateful for him and everything he's done for me. I feel like I just needed to at least put him over once somewhere. And I feel like that was probably the best time. And if I was to choose one more,
okay,
being able to square off against Madman Fulton in my second ever match.
Oh, wow. Okay.
That was incredible.
Intimidating?
Absolutely terrifying. You don't realize just how big of a man he is until you actually step in the ring with him, and you stand eye to eye and you're just looking up, and it's like, there's nothing I can do. He can do whatever he wants to me, and I'm just going to take it. So honestly, and I remember we got to the back, and even then he was like, you did such a good job getting the crowd with you that you made me and Ben look like heels. Yeah. He almost felt bad for beating on me.
That's amazing. Hear that would be second match in. Wow.
Yeah. Second match in, I got that advice from Madman Fulton, and that stuck with me, man. That's something that's just like, I couldn't believe it. Someone like that's accomplished as much as he has, to say that about me in my second ever match was it was unheard of. Something I didn't think I would ever hear in a million years, yet I'm hearing that. And it's really made me grateful, very grateful for everything that I went through to get to my first match. Because if I didn't have all that time, if I was just sent out there without the care and the preparation that I was given, I don't think I'd be sitting here and talking to you today. I think I'd be just some loser that hasn't accomplished anything, or, I wouldn't be happy in my wrestling.
That's
And that's
amazing.
something I'm very lucky for. I
Yeah.
can say I'm happy with how I'm turning out, where I'm going, and the steps I'm taking to get there because I'm driven. Right now, I am hungry to just get better with every single match I do. I need to get better.
That's awesome. So recently you've been participating in some activities with Empire. Can you tell me a little bit about how that's come to be?
So I've see, when I first started, I remember watching Crystal Moon and Matt Grant and JT Kirk. I remember watching them going out there and killing it before I even, you know, stepped foot in the ring. And so when I first started training, me and Crystal Moon, we became best friends. Really, just off the bat, just best friends. Something about she's such a kind person. Don't let her catch me saying that because she would hate me for saying that. But she's such an amazing person, and we just the bond that people get from wrestling is just there's nothing like it. There's nothing like it. You know, there's sports, but there's pro wrestling, and the bond you make with other people, it's unreal. And so as I kept, going and training, she's helped me throughout the years getting better, whether it's in the ring or psychology. She's always helped me throughout anything I've never understood or had a hard time understanding, and just always been there for me. And Matt and JT are just two people that I've always loved. I've always loved watching them, always inspired to be like them. And when I finally got my green light, they also have kind of guided me in the right direction of how to get better. Um, so it wasn't until they had an opening in Indiana where they needed a fourth person. I I needed to start wrestling in the States. That was the next step for me. I've done a lot, but I wanted to get to the States. And so I hopped on the opportunity. I'm like, please, 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 please let me be your fourth. And they said yes. So that's kind of how it came to be. And now I'm excited for this upcoming show because now I get to tag with someone that I consider my sister.
That's amazing. So just a couple questions left for you here. One of them is the very tried and true cliche question. Who is the dream opponent for you?
Wow, dream opponent. And this is anybody?
Well, let's stick to people who are still actively competing.
You know what? I know I had a match with him in crossbody, but it was like a fatal four way, and it was just a little bit of like a brawl, and that's about it. But Fuerza,
Oh, he's great.
I mean, how can you not say Fuerza? He's so freaking good. So freaking good. And he owns this. If you don't say Fuerza isn't one of the guys that owns Ontario wrestling, then you're just kidding yourself. And it goes back to I want to prove myself, especially against one of the best. So I would say hands down, it's either Fuerza. I haven't. I would say a close second is Vertigo.
Okay.
Close second is Vertigo. I haven't had many talks with Vertigo, but I've always respected his work. He's so good. Again, like Fuerza, just owns this shit, man. And he just someone that inspires you to go over the distance and above and beyond. So those are two guys I would just love to eventually be able to prove myself against.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay, and then the last question is always a difficult one for people, but I close out every show with it. If you could go back and talk to a young version of yourself when you were just starting out, getting into wrestling training, what piece of advice would you give yourself that could perhaps also help somebody else who's on the fence right now about getting into it?
You got to have fun. You got to have fun. You got to love what you do, because if you don't, and you're just getting into this for the sake of trying to make an extra buck on the weekend, or if you're just trying to, you know, uh, get people to chant your name, then you're in it for the wrong reason, I think. I think, honestly, you just need to have fun with the process of training and the process of doing what we do. And if you don't, then it's going to be a long ride and you're not going to enjoy it. You're going to burn out fast. And that's why everything I do it for fun. I do it to put a smile on my face.
Simple and effective advice. I think more people need to just boil it down to wrestling is supposed to be fun.
That's what it is, man. Like, I mean, why do we all love this? Because it's an art form. And art is just it's entertainment. It's fun. And if, again, entertainment, it boils down to entertainment. And if you're not getting entertainment for yourself, then why are you doing it? It's a chore. It's work. Nobody wants to go to work.
No.
Why would you want to go to work? I don't. So you got to love what you do. And if you don't, then it's no point in getting into it.
Powerful words. So before we sign out, can you just let people know again where they can find you online if they want to follow you on social media, keep up to date with what you got going on?
If you want to follow me on Twitter, it's Mikey Jenkins PW. And I'm pretty sure Instagram's the same thing. Facebook, it's Mikey Bergeron, Bergeron. And yeah.
Thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I had an absolute blast here today.
Thank you for tuning in to Independent Wrestling Profiles. Please help out the show if you can with a like, subscription, or review. We'll see you next time.